Well, I can never see on the side.
It's very funny
Come over here and sit on the road. Everybody.
Joel, you can bring this on Grandma. Can you bring this on Grandma?
The nearest seems.
Happy birthday. Pick them all up and put them back in the paddock.
Oh.
Right. Well, I'm standing here in my hat because I haven't been going to take it off. There's too many blokes eyeing it off. And I reckon if I put it down, I mightn't see it again. But I've been appointed, I suppose because I'm the senior partner or something. They do get Gough Whitlam to do things, and Malcolm Fraser, and all the old fellas occasionally. So perhaps that's the reason, or the thinking behind asking me to say something this afternoon. And it's a really great occasion to be together like this with great grandma, and we're going to ask for little kids. I'll ask you in a minute. I thought we might explain things for you because there are 4 generations here. And the oldest generation, stand up the person who's in the oldest generation. That's Grandma. Give her right. And she had 4 children and they got married, and that's the 2nd generation. Stand up the second generation.
Hooray! Come on,
Ronnie? There should be 8 of them. That right? 2, 4, 6, 8. Right? That's the 2nd generation. And then they had children, and that lot got married, and that's the 3rd generation. Stand up the 3rd generation.
If you can.
I'll get the chair.
What are you sitting down for?
Chair break.
He was watching me collapse on the ground.
And then they got married, and they've had children, and that's the 4th generation. Stand up the 4th generation.
Hey!
Some of them can't stand up, but they're the ones who are going to give great grandma a little flower gift posy. Would you like to go over and give it to her?
Daniel.
And give her a kiss, perhaps. All of you. Line up. Give great grandma a kiss. We'll get him up. Hey. Right. And I was thinking there's a good collection of people because we've got great-grandparents, and we've got grandparents, and we've got parents, and we've even got a bride. Stand up the bride. You're a bride for 12 months, aren't you? Yes. Right. Two brides. You haven't got any teenagers?
No, we're past.
We've got some children, and we've got some toddlers, and we've got some babies. So that's a complete plan, isn't it? And when we think of all those 4 generations, you know, I thought, well, we might remember some things that happened. Which one?
5 generations.
The 4. Yeah, the 4. We might remember some of the things that have happened in that time. And, you know, when great-grandma was a very little girl, one day she was in with her father in the sulky. And they were going along the road, and a snake ran across the road. And and her father stopped the sulky, and he got out and he grabbed a stick and he chased the snake, and it went racing across the road through the fence. So he went up to the fence and he leant over the fence with a big stick and he was going to whack it. And do you know what the snake did? No. He turned around and came back through the fence. Is that right, Grandma? Now, I know that story because who told me? Great grandma told me that. Right. And she's written lots of her stories down, hasn't she? And you might be able to read about them in her books later on. Later on, she started school, and she had to ride a pony to school, and it was a long way to go. And she wasn't a very strong little girl, yet she still lived to be 90 years old. But she could only go to school 3 days a week. She wasn't strong enough to go every day of the week. So she had a school that started like that. How'd you like to only go 3 days every week? And later on she grew up and she got old enough to drive a car. She learned to drive a car, and one day, you remember this story because you remember it for a long time to come. She had to take all the eggs into town, and she was driving the car so fast she came to a bump and she went over the bump, and what do you think happened to the eggs? They broke. So don't you forget those 3 stories about great-grandma when she was a young girl. And that's the story that generation, or that era of her life. In the next era, I'd call it the sand shoe era. Because I saw a pair looked a bit like the old sand shoes. In the old days, sand shoes weren't flash like they are now. We have sports shoes and all the cushioning and air and all the other things pump up. But the sand shoes that we used to have when Grandma was a young lady, they were just a solid piece of rubber for the sole, and the top was made of canvas. And there wasn't much give in it, was there, great-grandma? And when they sat in your wardrobe for a while, they got very flat, but they were easy to pack if you were going somewhere. And I remember great-grandma used to wear them because she used to play tennis. And in those days, if you wanted to get the tennis court ready, you got an old teapot and you mixed up the whiting and you marked the lines with a teapot. Don't you laugh at me? And then you got your old sand shoes out and you played tennis. And if anyone did a very cunning thing to you, you said, "Oh, you rubbish," because that was Grandma's favourite saying. She called people rubbish if they said you played a good stroke. And it's also the sand shoe era because we used to go away in the little car. And Grandma used to have to pack it up with all our things for our holidays. And she packed it up so tightly that if there was one sand shoe left out, there'd hardly be room to put it in at the last minute. It was so tight. And there was another thing that used to happen on those holidays, and I don't know a lot about this, but in the middle of Murrurundi there's a brick structure, and there's a horse trough there, and I thought I'd invite David Muir to explain the true story of that horse trough. Because he knows, we don't. He knows the true story. You know a good one, David.
Hit me stuff.